Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Big Future Live. My name is Tony Dismuke, and I'm so excited to be kicking off tonight's Big Future Live event, your PSAT/SAT, your career connection. Like I mentioned earlier, my name is Tony, and I'm a senior from Arabia Mountain High School in Atlanta, Georgia. Like many others my age, I never really knew what I wanted to be growing up. I mostly went along with what others told me I would be good at. Thankfully, I was able to find a career that combines my love of engineering with my love of psychology in the field of human factor engineering. I would have never been able to do that without being guided by my peers, teachers, and artisans from the industry. Hopefully, tonight's event will help you do the exact same thing. We are so thankful that you're joining us tonight. I know it's probably been a busy day at school or work for our educators and parents joining us, so thank you for joining us tonight at Big Future Live. For those of you who don't know, Big Future Live is a series of community virtual events where you can connect with college reps, career experts, and peers to help you plan for life after high school. Big Future Live was created so you could get your questions answered to help you plan for your future your way. We all know that figuring out your career path isn't always easy, and how you get there isn't always clear. I know you probably have tons of questions about how to figure out your career path and how skills in the hiring industry are changing, and what this all means for young people. Today, we are joined by our expert from Roblox and Jobs for the Future to help you answer those questions. So get your questions ready, and welcome to the Big Future Live family.
Great. Thank you so much, Tony. And thank you to all of our students and caring adults who are joining us this evening. We're really excited about the conversation that connects your PSAT and SAT score over to careers. I'm Allison Danielson. I work in the Big Future division here at the College Board, and I'm going to be moderating our conversation this evening. And Big Future is actually a team of individuals who are career and college planning professionals, former educators, parents, and others who come together every day to help young people take the right first step after high school, which can be complicated and overwhelming. And that's why we have these conversations in Big Future Live. As Tony said, this is a place to get your questions answered. So we want to hear from you. What's on your mind? We actually already have a number of questions that's come into the chat. And so I want to go over a few housekeeping items, and then we're going to jump right into the conversation with our experts. First, you're going to be in listen-only mode for this discussion. And so that means you'll be able to see us here on the screen, but we won't be able to see you. That doesn't mean, though, that we don't want to hear from you. You actually have an ability in the chat there at the bottom. You're going to have a box to ask a question, and we want you to put all of your questions in there. We're going to do our best to answer as many as we can. We know we're not going to get to everything tonight, but we're going to try to get through as many as possible. We're then going to ask you after this conversation to share some feedback with us. We'd love for you to take an extra couple minutes and share what you thought of the event and make sure that we're providing programming that is the most beneficial as it can be. And then finally, if something comes up and you have to leave early, you have to step away for a minute, we're recording the conversation. And so we're going to post that later so that you can view it on demand at bigfuture.org/live. I'm so excited for our conversation tonight. We have two incredible individuals who are joining us from Jobs for the Future and Roblox. First, Claire Bertrand is the Senior Director of JFF Labs in Jobs for the Future, and Jack Buckley is the Vice President of People Science at Roblox. Before we dive in to our conversation with Jack and Claire, I want to spend a couple of minutes talking about the work that we've done in Big Future with that team of incredible individuals to make sure that you have the ability to explore more than 1,000 occupations today for free, and that you can connect your PSAT and SAT score over to that planning. Our overall discussion is going to be focused on skills needed for career exploration, how you should think about those skills connected to life after high school and work after high school, and then how you could consider them as you create your plan for what you should do next. And so we're going to take a minute here and actually walk you through how to view this really valuable information. We got a question from Michael before we started about how to actually connect the PSAT and SAT to career planning and information. And so if you log on to bigfuture.org today, you can actually go to your personalized dashboard and you'll be able to see the Explore Career section. You have two options at that point that can get you down a path to see this information. First, you can take a career quiz, answer a few questions about what you like and what you don't like, and you can see how many different careers actually match your interest. But if you already know what you want to do, you could go right into our career search tool and search for the careers that interest you most. And so if we see on the screen here, there is geoscientist is a career that maybe came up in your career quiz match. Probably didn't come up in my career quiz match. I'm not as good as a match for geoscientist, but certainly maybe something interesting to somebody like Tony. And I can see here that this job, when I'm looking at the page, it's got average median salary of $86,000 a year. It's projected to grow 5% in the next 5 years. I can learn all about what geoscientists do. I can learn that they're also called geologists. I can click into the tab for knowledge, skills, and abilities that actually outlines all of the knowledge, skills, and abilities associated with that career. And because we have that information on all 1,000+ careers, we were able to map that to the things that we measure on the PSAT and SAT. And so if you click into the career readiness tab, you'll be able to see this information that we're showing on the screen. You log into your account, you connect your score, and you'll be able to see that geoscientist turns out is actually not just something you're on track for, but a really strong match for your math and reading and writing skills. So that's pretty exciting. You could add that career to your career list. That would get you started on an entry for a Big Future scholarship, would help you pay for education after high school. Oop, we had a hiccup there for a second. And then you maybe are interested in looking at other kinds of occupations. Tony talked about how her interest in engineering actually matched up to interest in psychology. And so if you wanted to look at something like counseling psychology, which is definitely a career I would be more interested in, you could see here in the career readiness tab that your math is in fact on track, but your reading and writing needs a little bit of work. And so that shouldn't be a stop sign. Skills are not fixed. In fact, one thing you'll hear tonight, I'm sure, is that you're going to need to continuously develop skills over your lifetime and throughout your career. And so if you get information that says you need to do a little bit of work here, that's just a sign that you can go into free tools and resources from our partners at Khan Academy, like official SAT practice, to improve in those areas. You can also spend some time with caring adults, educators, counselors, folks in school to help you think about how might you get better so that you're ready to pursue that career path. And so that's just a little bit of information as we get started here. As I said, we're going to answer your questions. So we're going to head right into the Q&A and want to actually start with a question that we got before we got started here in the chat. And so James asked Jack, how can he apply for a job at Roblox? Which I think is really interesting in relation to what we just talked about skills. So would love for you to share a little bit of information about how you think about skills in hiring and how you see skills evolving in the world of work.
Sure. So great question. I mean, the trivial answer is you go to our website to jobs.roblox.com and you see every available position. The right answer, though, is to try to figure out how to build the record resume of skills and experience that you need to get a job at a place like Roblox. A lot of it comes down, keep in mind, of course, that we have many different types of job families or career paths, even at a relatively small company like this. We are predominantly software engineers. And so the easiest way to get a job, not that it's terribly easy, is to major in computer science or software engineering and to focus in different aspects of sort of modern technology platform development. But we do have a whole host of really other interesting career paths here. 3D artists, designers, human factor designers, or what we call user experience or user interface designers, data scientists like my team, psychologists, recruiters, people that hire. We have hundreds of recruiters, people who work just in other areas of human capital. So like most modern large organizations, lawyers, I mean, just about everything we need. And so we tend to hire across the board. So it's very possible to have a career, at a technology company or other large employers with almost any background. But I would say your chances are much higher if you are a software engineer, for sure. Allison, you mentioned the need to very likely to continue to develop skills. And I think that's very important because almost any degree program that you pick is going to help you get that foundation, but you're going to need to almost everybody we hire has something that they need to continue to learn, even immediately and then certainly over their career. And so it's very important to sort of keep an eye on trends in your chosen field and not be afraid to admit that you need to reskill. I do it too. We got to go back and learn something new to stay current. It's pretty complicated out there. So there's not one thing you can do that just sets you up for the rest of your life. You need to be continuously monitoring what's happening and and stay abreast of your field for sure.
Great, that's super helpful. And we actually had a question from Jelly about what is a good major if you're thinking about working at Roblox. So you answered that for us, Jack. For students who don't actually know what they want to do yet, or some people know exactly what they want to do, there are still steps they need to take in order to get ready. So Claire, would love to hear from you about your advice for people getting started in this process and maybe how you would think about approaching this process really across your lifetime.
Sure. Hey, everybody. So I'm going to just introduce my organization really quickly because I think everyone's pretty familiar with Roblox. But I'm Claire Burchard. I work for a nonprofit that's national called JFF. Our mission is to drive the transformation of the American workforce and education system to achieve equitable economic advancement for all. And I work with partners such as students, educators, communities, and technologists to build a better career planning, decision-making, and navigation ecosystem for students like yourselves. I've been doing that for like the past decade. So in terms of where you should start, I think that, first and foremost, you aren't alone. You really should start in school. And so your school district can help you do that, or your family can help you do that. But there are schools and districts that are starting career awareness and exploration in kindergarten, but don't worry about if you didn't start there. But I think everyone should be building awareness from an early age, especially around connecting learning in school to like real world and the world of work. So I think it's particularly helpful for students to start early because as a child gets older, like it becomes a teenager, life can become really more stressful. So you may have a job if you're a teen or you take care of siblings, you're juggling all of that with school. If schools and other learning environments normalize and make routine a variety of career awareness and exploration activities, students can start to build like your professional identity, understand the variety of occupations and jobs that are out there and of interest to you. And so if career exploration starts at 11th grade, that's okay. You can even start career exploration at 21 or 22. But that can feel like it's a transition layered on another transition. So, you may feel like less supported and more rushed. So we do recommend that starting kind of career exploration, getting to know yourself in sort of the context of career and real world, makes sense to start maybe in middle school. So let's say you're in 8th or 9th grade, and this may not track for everybody, but you'd want to try to figure out who you are, what your future holds for you, how you fit into the world. And the purpose of career exploration in 8th or 9th grade, say, is to help a student build self-awareness, learn about potential careers, and begin to develop a plan for reaching future goals. So if you're in 11th or 12th grade, you start engaging in some of your first career-related decisions. And also those career-related decisions should be mapping to sort of what you want to do in post-secondary, how you want to pursue your initial career interest. The other thing I'd suggest is that you start thinking about building something called career capital. So that's like social capital, and social capital is like the resources and networks that you have. But career capital is really about building relationships with people in a career the students are seeking. So like with a career you're interested in, start building relationships with people in that career. 2, gaining access to information and resources about your career interests. And 3, participating in career exposure experiences related to a career choice. So again, like building that career capital that might happen 12th grade, it may happen a couple years out of high school, depending on the pathway you're on. But you want to start early if you can, but it's also a lifelong process. So if you haven't started yet, that's certainly okay. The kind of messaging I just talked about starting early, that's really for families and schools and education systems to do better by you all by, but you can start anytime and know that it's not necessarily a linear path. As Jack was noting, you always need to be learning, you always need to be upskilling, and navigation is going to happen throughout your life.
Great. That's a ton of really helpful information, Claire, and hopefully reassuring for students and families who are with us, knowing that they can really start at any time. The earlier, the better, but wherever they are, there is something they can do to help them plan for their future. Jack, we've got a bunch of questions actually for folks who know Roblox, but maybe don't know exactly what you do every day. So would love to hear more about what your work looks like. And then have a kind of related question about work in Roblox. We talked a little bit about majors. I heard Claire very intentionally use the word post-secondary, which is inclusive of really multiple kinds of training after high school, multiple kinds of education programs. How are you all thinking about college as it relates to hiring? Is the four-year degree still the best pathway, and how do you look at that?
So those are great questions, and I see dozens more very good questions coming in. So quickly, I don't want to take a lot of time on what I do. I'm very lucky to be able to do what I do. I've been at Roblox for 2 years. My startup that I was at was acquired by Roblox. We were building game-based assessment for hiring. So, in order to work at, in this case, a consulting company, McKinsey & Company, to get a job as a business analyst at McKinsey, you would play our games essentially and do a lot of other things. And so Roblox wanted to build games to help hire people, and they bought our company to do that. When I came in, though, I've done a lot of other things. In fact, I worked at the College Board once upon a time on the a couple SATs ago, I guess now, and I've built a lot of other assessment, and I was a statistics professor at 2 colleges. So I, talked to our CEO, and they needed a lot of other things internally. So essentially, I run the team of data scientists, statisticians, psychologists. We build assessments. We work on the hiring process, which I'm here. We also, though, work on anything to do with supporting our people. So anything scientific or data-driven inside the company. What I don't do, other than play Roblox, is I don't work on the Roblox product. I just work with our people inside. So the second question, I guess, about how we think about degrees. So, it's probably a couple ways. So first, I want to make it clear, degrees are still really important almost all the time. I can always think, of a few examples of people who've been really successful without a college degree, and sometimes those people really dominate, media coverage, but it's really unusual. We have a few, even at Roblox. There are people who were community developers. They were building games in Roblox, and maybe they started college and they realized that they would be more successful building games, and they dropped out, and they either we hired them or they run game companies now. But the odds are low, and it's not advice. It's not the advice I gave my kids. You're much better off following something you love, but also getting a well-rounded education, at least through college. And I would say our recruiters tend to look at that. It's not say we wouldn't hire somebody with a 4-year degree, but it's a much higher burden to try to convince management, and because that college degree, depending on what it's in, conveys very simply a whole bunch of your skills and competencies, what we call. So not only the cognitive things, the things you studied in school, right? If you're a aero astro engineer, I know what you studied, and if I see your grades, I know how you did. But also the fact that you completed that program, right? That you got yourself through a really rigorous, challenging bunch of hard work tells an employer a lot about what you're able to do. And so college still remains a really strong signal in the workforce, for sure. Let me stop there.
Great. That's a lot of good information, and a lot more questions have come in. Would love to build on your early comments about skills that matter for success. We've spent some time on some of the hard skills, math, reading, writing, coding, some of those things, but you started to touch on some of the other things that matter for success. So would love, Claire, from your perspective, what other skills matter, and how can students think about strengthening them?
Sure. I also just want to continue on the last question. I think Jack made excellent points about the fact that college degrees are really important to Roblox, but Roblox does not employ everyone in the United States. So I do think there are a lot of multiple pathways that students can pursue. And I want to just give students a few questions to consider when they're thinking about schooling, whether it be a college or like post-secondary program, right? So I think in order to understand sort of if it connects to your goals, to the resources you have, or really where you want to go next, and it doesn't have to be linear, as we noted, but really if you're looking at a college or post-secondary program, you want to be thinking about what, how, and when will I learn? Like, what does this program look like? How will I afford this program or this college? When will I start working and earning in my field? So how long will it take me to get out and start earning? And then how might this program position me for career success? So does this career need a degree? Do employers hire people with less than a college degree. And you can look at that through labor market information as well as talking to employers. But I just wanted to note that and kind of round out Jack's really awesome answer about how Roblox hires people, and talk a little bit more broadly about post-secondary and multiple pathways. But to the question you asked, Allison, I want to just talk a little bit about like the kind of idea of employability skills. And I think these are really important. They're durable. And something that I really love, and it's a resource I want to point people to, is the MIT's Human Skills Matrix. And this sounds a little fancy, but it's just online, pretty easy to look up. But I like this because MIT reviewed 40 different employability skills matrices. So they looked at a bunch of different, documents on what skills do employers look for, and they have a framework for 24 durable skills. And it's divided into thinking, right? This is the kind of 4 quadrants of skills: thinking, which is like creativity, comfort with ambiguity and systems thinking; interacting, which is like communications, collaboration, and empathy; managing ourselves, which is self-awareness, adaptability, accountability; and then also leading, right? So thinking, interacting, managing ourselves, and leading being strategic vision, empowerment. And so those are sort of the areas of skills that employers are always going to be looking for in a person, and even as like technology advances, these are the kind of human skills that we're going to bring to the table. MIT does have an assessment. They do have some curriculum, but I would encourage everyone to look at those skills because it's really just a great, very straightforward set of 24 kind of employability skills. And I'd like to hand it back to Jack too, if he has any comments on soft skills or employability skills or professional skills that you're looking for at Roblox.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's a great opportunity. It's interesting, as you know, Claire, well, almost everybody agrees on these skills, but they all have different names for them. We have actually, so for new college graduates, when we're trying to fill a position for somebody just out of college or entry level roles here, we look at 13 different competencies, and they would map very closely to a lot of those that you described. It's interesting. Only one of them is your technical ability to code. For example, for a software engineer, we give an assessment to see if how good of a programmer you are. But that's only one piece of a really big puzzle. And some of those are interpersonal skills, your ability to communicate and work in a team. And some of them are in fact, literally creative problem solving and systems thinking are really important skills that we measure with games at Roblox, but other people measure different ways. And some of these things you assess in candidates through the interview process, right? Through carefully designed interview questions by skilled recruiters to try to elicit your experience. And some of them you can assess through your resume and your practical experience. But yes, absolutely. There's not a single one thing that any employer would use to select people. It's always a big mix and very different kinds of skills.
Great. And I just want to double click on, Claire, what you said about the multiple potential paths to success. I think one thing that we all see from the research is that most good jobs require some training or education after high school, but there are a lot of different kinds of options ahead of students. And we don't think everybody should start at a 4-year, maybe a place that many people end up later. But we did get a question here from Christine about whether she should consider going to a community college or go directly to a university. So Claire, I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think you really need to consider your career goals and your interests and work backwards from there. So I think where do you want to end up, and then work backwards and see if community college or some other post-secondary training program fits for you. So I'd say if you want to work in healthcare, depending on what you want to do, a credentialing program might be the right track. Community college might have a program for you. But are employers actually hiring someone with an associate's, or is it a kind of tougher labor market where they're looking for BSs? So you have to look at those sorts of things. Use labor market information, which I know Big Future has in its platform. And if also if you want to be a plumber, you'd go and be an apprentice, right? You'd go into an apprenticeship program. If you want to work in marketing, that could be a little trickier. You could have been kind of creating content online since you were 13, working with brands already. If you have that opportunity to make money, do that first. So again, you have to look at your goals and your resources and just do what makes the most sense for you in terms of what shape post-secondary is going to take for you, right? Like just after high school. And if you don't know what you want to do, again, it doesn't have to be linear. You can take a few courses at community college. I'd say still, though, like really have some structure, though, to that, have a plan. And again, just working backwards from where you think you want to be in maybe a year or two. And if you don't know where you want to be in a year or two, take a beat. Maybe some of our caring adults on the call may not love me saying that, but I think, taking a moment, breathe, and asking yourself questions about what you value, what you want to do, is always a good place to start. Reflection is always a good place to start.
And to follow up on that, we've got some questions here, really for folks who are thinking about what they want to do long-term and interested when you talked about working in a nonprofit. Would love to hear a little bit more about, like, what does your day actually look like, Claire?
Oh God, that's such a good question. So I work at a nonprofit because I really am. So my values that I've reflected on are really my work values, if you will, like curiosity and service. So I knew from a pretty young age, I was an activist in college, did a lot of volunteer and service work, that I really wanted to work to make other people's lives better and really to make just the system and society a better place where more people can have access to opportunity. A lot of the opportunity I had, everyone should have. So in terms of the day-to-day, so we don't work at a organization that does direct service. That would be places where folks are going to get jobs or to get training. We actually help those organizations, or we help schools, we help workforce to do sort of like larger scale initiatives and things called change management, where you're trying to change a system for the better, which sounds a little abstract. It is, but we do get good work and good impact and outcomes. In terms of my day-to-day, it's definitely an office job. So I'm in meetings. We're working with partners in the field. A lot of what I do personally, I actually run a career navigation platform for a large youth serving system out of the federal government. So I actually run like a help desk. I design the platform, we build the platform, and students create career plans with the platform. There's about, 25,000 students who use the platform each year. And we train the instructors on that and educators. And I also work with clients like the College Board to help integrate career insights into their platform. So it's a little academic. It's a lot of fun. It helps me sort of, I believe, move systems towards serving people better and more equitably. And yeah, a lot of meetings, a lot of Zoom calls. But it's good work, and you do a lot of big systems change. I hope that's helpful, and wasn't a lot of words that were too jargony there, guys.
Yeah, and hopefully that helps build some confidence from this group about the tools that we're building together on Big Future, because Claire has tremendous amount of experience in her organization in really building things that work. And so I think you touched on some things that weren't obvious. So if I use the platform that you built and the one that we're building together to learn about a career, I wouldn't know all of the things that you just said. And so I think we've got a bunch of questions here about work experience and internships, which I think is one way that you can learn a little bit more about what a career is actually like. And so Jack, would love to hear from you. Sarah asked a question. If she does an internship, what does an ideal environment actually look like for that?
So I have noticed a bunch of great questions on internships. So again, to Claire's earlier point, it depends a lot on what field we're talking about, right? What career trajectory. I will say in fields like technology, broadly defined, in parts of the entertainment industry, in game development, internships are vital. They're as important as your degree, and employers are looking at a record of progressively detailed or progressive responsibility through internships to see what you're doing throughout your career. At the extremely high-end selective employers that usually you have to have interned with them. Most of us are not so picky. We're happy to see if you've learned real skills. I mean, what an internship shows us is that you know what it's like to work in a place like ours, whatever ours is, right? So if you're an industry that depends on interns as part of your sort of your growth and development process, that record of internships is very important. It's tough to say. An ideal one, I would say, a lot of it has to do with getting a real project that you can get your hands on as an intern and deliver during the 6 to 12 week or whatever the period of performance is of your internship. Sometimes they're like just a summer, sometimes they may go throughout the year part-time. I would say it should be paid. In many states, that's the law. It's not always, but unpaid interns, I don't think it's very fair to the interns, and we always pay ours. And you should have real responsibility. You should work on something real, be able to say, look, this was the project I did as an intern. I didn't just, sit around and take advantage of the company environment. You want to seek out that responsibility and have a real project, which also means ideally that your campus, if you're in college, has some career information that can help recommend good internships, right? Because some companies are really good at this and providing you a mentor, some organizations, and have a strong structured internship program, and others don't. And so you definitely need to do some searching and talking to your classmates and hopefully some advisors on your campus to figure out this is an internship worth doing. I would say no matter what, an internship is better than none, but definitely they're not all equal, and some are much more valuable to you.
Great. Claire, would love to give you the opportunity to respond here, especially I know you queued up tonight talking about career capital, and this feels like a very related topic.
Yeah, I think any sort of experience you can get, work-based learning is always great. I know a lot of fantastic career tactical education schools and programs across the country do a great job of that. I think we hire interns at JFF. I actually have a intern working with us right now who came out of a youth build program in Newark. And this young woman is actually working on our help desk specialist on our career navigation tool, where she's working with students and instructors, helping with them with their IT. And she's going to college, and she graduated from an alternative high school. And those are exactly the students we're serving. And she's awesome. And I think, especially if you are working with or for youth and young adults, having, people come in and understand what you're doing, but also be able to relate to, people that are close to their age. It's been really awesome. And also we can, she's just thriving and just contributing so much to the team. So I think it helps employers also better understand how to work with their sort of like entry level employees or frontline workers. So as an organization, JFF really encourages employers to take on interns, pay them, give them substantive projects, and then also make sure that managers and their, other company employees have time to engage with those interns. So I would say that, it's really important to get an internship, to get some job experience. But even if you can job shadow, that's really helpful as well. And, anything you can do. But again, I would say to just like double click on what Jack said about like being paid for your work is important. And, depending on the industry, that can be tough to convince folks that that's really the law and that's what should be done. But I think there's, a lot more equitable pathways towards internships across the board in recent years. So, yeah, super important, great to do.
That's a lot of helpful information. We got a lot of questions in the beginning of tonight because many people sat for the PSAT or SAT recently, and they were asking the meaning of their scores, what to do with the information. And I think we shared a little bit about how to use that as context in career planning. But there's a larger conversation about assessment. And so colleges and other post-secondary institutions have differing policies on assessments. They can be valuable in many cases in supporting and strengthening students' applications. But in others, they're just not as required as they were in the past. But one thing that you've shared with me, Jack, and when we were talking with Claire before this, was really about the role of assessments in hiring and how little folks know there. So would love for you to just share a little bit with this group about kind of how the role that assessment plays over an individual's lifetime and how that's actually evolving.
Yeah, it's been really interesting. I mean, the world has changed enormously, obviously, in the last college, post-secondary education. In many cases, enrollments are down. They've changed a lot of their strategies for filling seats, and there are probably a few too many colleges, honestly, especially as more and more people move to hybrid degree programs and don't necessarily need that many, physical buildings, which means that industry is in a funny, if you think of college as an industry, post-secondary is in an interesting transition period. One thing, though, that I've seen, and again, I've worked, in the government as an academic, a large nonprofit, and now in a startup and now in a public company, every single one of them had different types of assessment for hiring. And it might range, from something as simple as if I was hiring an office manager, an executive assistant at the nonprofit, they still sat and took a test on Excel and Word and their ability to use common office software. Many companies, even if you're working in Amazon's warehouse, you take a battery of social emotional skills testing in order to be selected. Employers want to know if you have different skills, all the many skills that Claire discussed, the ones that we look for. Some of that is done, as I said, through face-to-face interview or group interviews, but a lot of that is done in industry across the board through different types of testing. And some of those tests to you will seem just a breeze, right? This is like some test that's designed to screen out people that have psychopathy or something, and you're going to be fine. But others of them are really hard. Our coding assessment, for example, we probably only take maybe the top decile, the top 10 of software engineers, just based 70 on everybody. And there's a lot of variation here, right? Businesses all do different things, but I would say almost surely into a prompt that you didn't have, time to prepare in advance. It really depends a lot on the field, but employers want to know if you have skills, and one of the best ways to know, unfortunately, is some kind of direct assessment of you. And it's one of the more fair ways, frankly, because it can have everybody do the same thing. Versus if I don't, and I just look at your resume and decide, oh, they must have these skills, but they haven't actually shown you that, then all kinds of variables, there's definitely a lot of it.
I think that's a super fascinating point, that the role of assessments is actually increasing in life after high school and college. And there's, obviously very active conversation about what it looks like in K-12 and in post-secondary. And so very helpful insight. Somehow we're already coming up towards the end of our conversation. And so I want to give each of you the opportunity to share the most important piece of advice. And I say that knowing that there's actually a lot of important pieces of advice here, but something that you want to leave our viewers with tonight as they're thinking about this process. So Claire, I'll start with you.
Sure, thanks. So I just want to, one more note about assessments, because I think when I hear Jack talking, I get nervous and a little overwhelmed. So I just wanted to note that I think this is the assessment in using assessments more is really an opportunity. And I just want to share with students and families, this is not a way to kind of wag a finger at an individual. I think if we're really smart about it, we can use these assessments to actually help shine a light on how learning systems like high schools and colleges are responding to the changing skill needs of employers, right? So if we have a lot of employers who are giving assessments to workers and they're noting that, people don't seem to have the skills we're looking for, there should be a conversation between education and employers so we can get people trained and make sure they are, passing those assessments and more people have access to really great jobs. So I just wanted to note that people are thinking about that. And, it's not just all on you as an individual to do great on the assessments and, people are thinking about, okay, how do we make sure that education and training really map to what employers are looking for, so you can, you feel prepared when you enter that interview and you do great on that assessment. So just wanted to note that. And I think for, the best advice I could probably think to give is that, this is a big, feels like a big, massive decision. You have to make something, figure it out now. And listen, I have been in the workforce for a long time. I work through the summer. Like September is not necessarily the start of every single year. It's January. So like, you don't have to rush, think about your own goals, work backwards, talk to your families, talk to your friends, look at labor market information, explore careers. I think, it's okay to breathe, and it's okay if your life and your career pathway is not linear. And you look at multiple pathways, not just sort of the one that seems to be, top of mind for everyone. Maybe that's not yours. So yeah, I'd say kind of explore and do you, I guess.
Yeah, and I think that probably is true of everybody here, that our career paths were not linear, and our education paths probably weren't either. I went to community college and then to university. And so I think there really are a lot of options out there, and you'll continue to go through this process. So Jack, would love to hear from you, one kind of final piece of advice for this audience.
I was going to say explore, so I think it's probably the standard advice. No, I mean, look, again, it's very hard to know what the rest of your life is going to be right now at any point, honestly. And the society gets you worked up into, I must make these right decisions at every one of these steps, or I have somehow failed or deviated from this path. I know very, very few people who are happy that are doing the same thing that they or their parents convinced them was the thing they needed to do when they were 18. And the only way to find that out is to explore. Every opportunity it's never a waste of time. There's always something interesting about somebody that's done something else and now have come to this area, whatever that area may be, that makes you a more rounded person. You're more likely to pick up those other competencies or the ability to use those different skills, all different texts. And getting sort of slotted. So I strongly would second the need to explore.
Great. Well, unfortunately, that's all we have time for today, but hopefully you heard from our amazing panelists and guests here the importance of exploring, keeping your options open. Big Future is here to help you through this process. We really want to be your personalized guide for planning for life after high school. So if we can do more to help you, please let us know. We're going to put up a feedback survey right after this, and we'd love to hear from you. What could we do better next time? What are you looking for in our tools and resources? And what other help do you need? So thank you so much, Claire and Jack. Really appreciated your time and all of your expertise tonight. I know our audience benefited from hearing your experience. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great night.